Eddy Hearn from Matchroom stated that he has inside sources about a potential fight between Jake El Gallo Paul versus the self-proclaimed face of boxing, Gervonta Tank Davis. Eddy Hearn also stated that Jake Paul was supposed to make the announcement after the Lamont Roach fight, but Lamont Roach threw a huge monkey wrench in the plans, as the whole boxing world did not give Lamont Roach any chance of beating Gervonta Tank Davis. But Lamont Roach actually held his own, and there was not a lot of action in this fight, and I don't really see a necessity for a rematch. But the small amount of action, I guess it went to a draw. They were both fighting similar to Edwin de los Santos versus Shakur Stevenson. But yes, they were supposed to announce the fight between Gervonta Tank Davis and Jake Paul after the Lamont Roach fight. And Eddy Hearn, he says that he has inside sources that are very credible. That's where he heard it from. And yes, Tank Davis was supposed to fight Jake Paul in November 2025. But that was only if Tank Davis beat Lamont Roach convincingly, but it went to a draw. And that fight made Tank Davis not look so invincible, even took a knee. It was just a bad look for Gervonta Tank Davis, the self-proclaimed face of boxing. Sometimes it does take a draw or a loss to rekindle the love of the sport of boxing. And I know it was a draw, but it was a very boring fight, not a lot of action, and the action that there was, I guess, went to a draw. So if Tank Davis wants that big money fight against Jake Paul, he's gonna have to beat Lamont Roach convincingly. And I believe it's easier said than done, because Lamont Roach knows Gervonta Tank Davis very well. They even fought in the amateurs. And yes, Tank Davis did beat Lamont Roach, but it was a split decision. Now, a split decision, that means that one of the judges gave it to Lamont Roach. So one of the judges thought that Lamont Roach won. That's what a split decision is. So all of the fights are very close, and I'm just wondering what Gervonta Tank Davis is gonna learn in such a short amount of time that's gonna make a difference against Lamont Roach when he hasn't been able to do it. Now, that pay-per-view with Lamont Roach only sold 149,000 pay-per-view buys. That's the reason Gervonta Tank Davis is the self-proclaimed face of boxing, not the actual real face of boxing. That goes to Canelo, because Canelo could fight a butcher, the mailman, me, and it will still sell a lot more than 149,000 pay-per-view buys. And that was because nobody knew Lamont Roach. That's why it sold 149,000 pay-per-view buys. But I'm pretty sure the rematch will sell a lot more, at least double, because now the boxing world knows who exactly Lamont Roach is and what he brings to the table. Lamont Roach got famous after the Gervonta Tank Davis fight because he did put the best performance against Tank Davis. After the Tank Davis fight, Lamont Roach went to all the boxing platforms and did interviews. He was saying that Tank Davis was too small, even though Lamont Roach went from 130 to 135 to challenge Tank Davis. And he said that the fight was so close in the last round, Tank Davis said, no matter what you did in this fight, they are not gonna give it to you. Now, if Tank Davis said this, that means that he knows he was either low on the scorecards or he was losing the fight. Now, Tank Davis and Lamont Roach know each other very well, that I do not know what Tank Davis and Lamont Roach are gonna do to make a difference in this fight, similar to Artur Beterbiev versus Dimitri Bivol. Those guys are neck to neck, similar to Lamont Roach versus Tank Davis. And I know Jake Paul versus Tank was supposed to happen, but what if Tank goes in there and actually gets knocked out by Lamont Roach? Will the Tank Davis versus Jake Paul fight still be big, or will the boxing world lose interest in the fight? Because it's not like Tank Davis lost the fight, it was a draw, and it was a very non-competitive fight. I'd say if Jake Paul and Tank Davis fight right now, it will still be the same. People will still want to watch it before the Tank Davis versus the Lamont Roach fight happen. I mean, how bigger can the fight get? It's still gonna be a very big fight because he did not lose. If he would have lost, it would have been a different story. People will say he lost to the smaller Lamont Roach. What do you think the heavyweight Jake Paul will do to Tank Davis? And I know there's a huge difference between Jake Paul and Lamont Roach in weight, and also a huge difference in talent and skill, because there are weight classes for a reason. I do not care how skilled you are, you're not gonna override all that weight. Do you guys remember that celebrity match between Shaquille O'Neal and Oscar de la Hoya and Sugar Shane Mosley? Shaquille O'Neal fought Oscar de la Hoya and Sugar Shane Mosley on separate nights. Now, there was a huge difference in skill. You could see who was the boxer and who was just the basketball player. Now, Sugar Shane Mosley and Oscar de la Hoya beat Shaquille O'Neal, but it was a very close fight because of the weight difference. But the only difference between that, Jake Paul and Shaquille O'Neal, is that Shaquille O'Neal is a basketball player and Jake Paul is dedicating himself to boxing. And yes, Tank Davis is a really good fighter, but I do not see how he is that much more better skill-wise than Oscar de la Hoya and Sugar Shane Mosley. They're all A-level fighters. So it might not be that easy as Mosley versus Shaquille and de la Hoya versus Shaquille, because Shaq did have a training camp and his trainer was Freddie Roach. Now, he did fight two fighters, so he did have two training camps, but he did not do it for years. He just did it for those two fights. And Jake Paul is doing it for the love of boxing, and he eventually wants to be some sort of champion. So Jake Paul, I'm pretty sure he could actually beat Shaquille O'Neal because he is a heavyweight and Shaquille O'Neal fought welterweight. I believe Shaq's a 7-footer. Even when he fought Mosley, he actually went on his knees and he was still bigger than Mosley. But the real boxers were such more skilled than him that it was a very interesting fight. But guess what, guys? I ain't the biggest, I'm the baddest. And if you want to help out your boy, throw $1 at the super thanks. I got to roll. Peace.
I shook up the world! I shook up the world! I shook up the world!